The Jersey Devil isn't the only thing that haunts up the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. The Pine Barrens is an eerie stretch of wilderness covering more than 7 counties. It's named for its nutrient-poor, acidic soil. You'll soon see that, despite the Barrens being heavily forested, many things have trouble surviving there, especially people. Today I have 5 allegedly true and extra creepy stories from the Pine Barrens that will haunt you for weeks on end. If you have a story of your own, share it with us at darkstories.org. We're looking for stories about mobile homes, trailer parks, RVs, and Halloween. Now, let's begin. Demon Cat and the Haunted Church. Experience 1. From Anonymous. It was Friday evening, and me and my 2 friends were riding around our town with a feeling of freedom, enjoying our temporary release from school. It was a nice evening that day, medium temperature with a cool breeze. My friends Cheese and Cousin, I'll nickname them that, we were all at Cousin's house when we were getting pretty bored. We chatted for a while, debating about what we should do with our time. We eventually settled on going to our other friend's house, uninvited of course. But Cheese was courteous enough to call him up first. That friend, unlike usual, picked up, letting us know that he was busy with his girlfriend. We missed the guy, and we were beginning to get fed up with him always ditching us for his girl. I mean, heck, she could join us if she wanted to. So now that we had nothing to do, well, again, we rode off into the evening sunset, discussing girls and the typical teenage stuff. Cheese said, "Well, if we ain't got nothing better to do, let's go take some pics of those creepy abandoned buildings behind the liquor store." I personally had no idea exactly where he was talking about, but Cousin did. We decided to go there, and I'd say I regretted that decision. We took a trail along a busy road called the Rail Trail. It used to be a railway line. The sun was beginning to set now, and the temperature was beginning to drop. I kept complaining, saying we should turn back and go home, but Cheese and Cousin insisted we were close. After half an hour of a ride, we reached the nuclear power plant in a town south from us. After crossing a bridge, we made it to the liquor store they told me about. We rode our bikes to the parking lot out back and continued down some trails from there. By then, we were riding on a trail in the middle of the Pine Barrens. I forgot to mention we lived in New Jersey. It's the home of the Pine Barrens, maybe the most mysterious and creepy dark woods in the state, maybe even the country. As we traversed the dark path, the sunset had dissipated. All that was left was a gray, ominous gloom in the sky. We went past a building which I assumed was an abandoned junkyard, for there were lots of old trucks and containers around a warehouse. I consulted my friends, who told me this was not the place they were talking about. I thought to myself, who in the world would build anything so deep in the woods, especially these woods? We passed the building and automatically made a left, going around a few concrete barriers to keep cars from taking the dirt road. After a minute or 2 of pedaling down the trail, we made it to an open area. There were 2 buildings here, one massive warehouse and a smaller brick building. We began to climb the little brick building, for the warehouse was too large to climb up. My friends took pictures, and then we began to explore the large warehouse. We were disappointed to find only piles of garbage and graffiti, although some of the demonic writing on the floor and wall worried me. Our friend called right as we were ready to leave, and he told us to not go into his house. He thought we broke in like we always do. We laughed it off and hung up. We had no intentions of going to his place that night. That's when my friend's phone died. Mine hadn't been charged, nor had my cousin's been charged. My heart sank when I realized we'd made the poor choice to come out here with a bunch of dead cell phones. We thought we were screwed, but luckily, I had one final light source, a detachable taillight on my bike. It gave everything an ominous red glow, though, but hey, it was better than nothing. We continued down the trail with me in front, giving a little bit of light. This is when things started to head south. We began to hear noises in the brush of the woods to our right. We all jumped when we heard it, feeling on edge. We panicked for a moment but calmed down quickly, convincing ourselves it was just an animal. Just as the goosebumps began to fade, we heard another sound, one that was otherworldly. It was accompanied by more rustling and snapping from the same spot, and we were freaking out more than last time. We started pedaling our bikes like crazy. I had no idea what was out there, but between the red glow around us from my light and the sheer darkness just outside the light source, I was fearing for my life. What was out here with us? What would happen if it caught us? As my mind reeled from fear, I suddenly took a tree branch to the eye. My eye stung and began to water up. I had trouble seeing out of it immediately. We cut right and I had to go over a few dirt mounds. I fell as my friend Cheese literally rode his bike over me in a panic. I thought I was a goner, my eye burning and flowing with water, and now my body was bruised. My fear told me that the thing that was around us, it was hot on our trail. I had to get up. I had to manage to catch up with my friends. We passed the junkyard, and we were finally back onto a hard road. We thought we were safe. We continued riding, but my friend Cheese said in a worried voice, "Guys, do you see that? It's about to cross." Me nor my cousin saw anything. That's when Cheese yelled and came to a stop. Cousin and I continued riding, though. We turned around and went back to Cheese, who sat on his bike scared and confused. He told us the thing crossed right in front of them, and then disappeared. He described it with a stutter, like a white cat-like animal of light. Me and Cousin were now as scared as he was. We thought he was seeing things. We continued on, even more creeped out. We finally came out of the parking lot of the liquor store, where we caught our breath. This didn't last long, though, because we really wanted to get out of there and go home. We continued down the rail trail. After 10 minutes of riding, Cheese made the same yell and came to a halt again. Me and Cousin kept riding in fear of there actually being something this time. Cheese caught back up to us and described once again what he saw. I'd never had such chills. He said he saw a black object on all fours, crawling across the path, and just like the other being, it disappeared. We ended up reaching a convenience store, where we decided to catch our breaths again and warm up. Surely, by then, we were far away from whatever Cheese had been seeing. I went to check my phone, but quickly remembered it was dead. I held down the power button to check. I stood in confusion as my phone, that was dead half an hour ago, was now at 48% battery. Had I misread it? I told my friends we were going, and we went straight back to my friend's house. My legs burned from the long ride, probably about 8 miles of riding in total, but the sweet relief of sitting down at my friend's couch, it made me feel so much better. We fooled around until I began to think about the warehouse. We'd been in such a panic that I didn't realize what I'd seen. In a large hole in the side of the building, there had been a shadow by my foot. There was nothing in front of me to cast that shadow, but the shape of it, as I recalled, that's what scared me, because it looked like a cat, one with no eyes, no mouth, nothing. I swallowed hard, trying to forget what I'd seen. the three of us agreed to never go back in those woods again. But this agreement would not last. Demon Cat and the Haunted Church. Experience number 2. From Anonymous. Not long after our previous experience at the warehouse, we were hanging out at Cousin's house when another friend of ours named Sink showed up. We told him our story, and instead of feeling creeped out like we had been, he seemed curious. "Sounds spooky, dude. Let's go over to the graveyard through the woods and see what we can find there." I looked at him like he was crazy, but somehow Cousin and Cheese were up for another nighttime adventure. Giving in to peer pressure, I joined them. I didn't have much else to do. Making things worse, my friend Sink brought a Ouija board with him. I didn't like this, but I didn't say anything. This time around, we all made sure our phones were charged. Then we headed out. We walked about 5 blocks to the path in the woods. We turned on the flashlights. It was about 10 o'clock then, and we were just about to walk through pitch-black woods with only phones for light. It was this portion of the journey that I feared more than the actual graveyard. We walked in a square formation, me and Sink in the back. In our fear, we locked arms. It was weird as we were both guys, but without a word, we knew it made each other more comfortable. We soon saw lights approaching, and we finally exited the woods. I think we all sighed in relief then. The worst part was over, or so we thought. We had to walk a final 5 blocks to reach the graveyard. When we finally did, we turned the flashlights back on and entered the field of the dead. We walked down the paved path on what was the newer side of the graveyard. I told Sink to take out the Ouija board, but now he refused. This was scary enough for him. I smirked. We continued down the path, panning the graveyard with our lights, looking for anything. We made it to the opposite end of the graveyard. There was a church there, boarded up with no way of entry, and all the lights were off. Me and Cousin were looking at the headstones around the church. We found it rather interesting. Some of the gravestones dated all the way back to the 1700s. We then began to examine some of the gravestones at the front of the graveyard. I was confused as to why these particular gravestones were on the outside of the fence, as if they weren't actually part of the graveyard. But these seemed to be even older. We continued to explore when I was suddenly drawn to a spot on the other side of the fence. I went up to the fence, shining my light into the graveyard. Cousin did the exact same thing, without saying a word. I swear I saw something pass in front of the light, but I brushed it off. Eventually, we both walked away from the fence, not a word being said, but a bad feeling coming over the whole group. Sink began to panic. It was 11:16 at the time, and he realized then that he had to be home at 11:30. But we had a problem. Me, Cheese, and Cousin did not want to go. After a long discussion, we decided that me and Sink would walk the long way around the woods, while Cousin and Cheese stayed at the graveyard. We were about to split up when we all froze. All at once, our gazes went to the church. Goosebumps covered my body. A chill flooded over me. Inside the abandoned church, a light had come on. When we all saw a shadow pass in front of the window, that was enough for us. I grabbed Sink and we ran. Not seconds later, we heard the screams of Cheese and Cousin from behind us, but we sprinted all the way home, not looking back. I couldn't believe we didn't learn our lesson last time, not to go out into the Pine Barrens at night. Some weird crap happens out here. Demon felines, shadows possessing abandoned and completely sealed up churches. I don't recommend it for a night out. I saw something in the woods of New Jersey. From Sneeves0426. This encounter happened to my friends Ted and Alex and I, in a park between Central Jersey and North Jersey. I'm also of Native American descent, and I'm pretty sure that a few nights ago my friends encountered something I believe to be a skinwalker. On the night in question, my friends and I were hanging around driving when one of them suggested we should go to the park. This sounded like a great idea, as the sun setting over the lake there is quite gorgeous. We got to the park at around 7:15. We made our way through the trail up to the lake. Now, Ted was really into the supernatural and paranormal, so as we were walking, he was talking about this. He said he hoped we encountered something at the park, as we were on native land after all. A few minutes later, Ted indicated that there was something ahead of us, and considering he had been talking about this stuff for so long, we assumed he was bluffing or trying to scare us. We didn't believe a word of it. Of course, we didn't see what he was pointing at. We continued walking when we made the unfortunate decision to begin talking about the skinwalker. Ye Nodlushiai. I winced when one of the other two said this, because you're not supposed to bring up the name of the skinwalker. Just speaking about it is said to bring one closer to you. As if on cue, we heard a sound behind us. I swallowed hard as the three of us turned and saw the most horrifying thing in our lives. Something tall, something skinny. It was moving very slowly towards us. The other two could not tell from this distance if it was another person or not, but I knew deep down. So as not to scare them, I told them that we should hurry and pick up the pace. We began to sprint down the trail, trying to lose the figure. When we turned around, it was still moving at the same pace. We thought we were safe then, so we began to slow down and walk. We were also close to a busy road with a bunch of cars roaring past. Being curious, I looked behind us again to see if the coast was clear now. Surely, at that rate, we must have lost him. I nearly had a heart attack, as now the figure was only a few yards away. It had stopped making any sound as it moved. I screamed, my friends and I bolting away as fast as we could. We needed to make it back to the car. Out of breath, we managed to make it back to the parking lot. The only car that was left was ours, and whatever that thing was, it was still following us, and it definitely was no person. We made it out okay, driving off, scared but alive. But we should have never spoken its name. A day later, I was walking my dogs around my house. I saw a cat come out of the forest and started walking towards me. I quickly retreated back inside. I'd been told stories of the skinwalker, and having been pursued by one the day before, I was not taking any chances. These creatures are said to change shape. A few hours later, I picked up my friend Ted. Originally, we were going to go back to my house and play some video games, but as soon as we got to my place, he said he felt awful, dreadful. We drove around a bit. I was hoping he'd feel a bit better, but as soon as we tried to go back to my place again, he'd feel worse. We didn't really get to hang out as planned. The other day, he ended up telling me that whatever he saw at the park, he saw it again at my house, giving the same description as to its shape. Tall, skinny, faceless, the same thing we saw at that park. These encounters have since died down, but we've learned our lesson, a lesson you should know. Don't speak of the skinwalker, especially out in the woods, because the last thing you want is its attention. What Happened to Me at Mount Misery, from Johnny Matt, 1986. This takes place more than a year ago. but I'll remember it like it was yesterday. I've always been a believer in the paranormal, but after experiencing this, I feel like it's opened me up more to the other side. It was 12 years ago in New Jersey, where I still live today. I was 20 years old at the time, and my mates and I had this tradition every other Monday of going to Pizza Hut and then going in search of places that were featured in Weird New Jersey magazine. We'd heard about this one place called Mount Misery, and we thought it was the perfect spot to go, as it wasn't too far from us. We eventually made our way out there and pulled onto the dirt road that goes through Mount Misery. Now here's where things start to get a little weird, for me at least. We saw what looked to be a religious retreat or church that was owned by the United Methodist Church. So we thought, oh great, this trip is going to be a bust. But we were wrong. Once you drive past that, it's nothing but woods. Creepy as hell woods. We came to a fork in the road and decided to go right, but by then I was starting to think that this was lame. I was leaning against the door with my head resting on my hand. I closed my eyes out of boredom, and the next thing I knew, my body suddenly tensed up, and I got really warm. I started breathing heavily, and I started to feel aggressive and angry. Soon enough, it felt as if I didn't have control over my own body. My friend next to me asks if I'm okay. I look at him, and I fight back the urge to hurt him. Now my friends in the front are getting worried too. So the driver makes a U-turn to get out of here, and while he's making the turn, I begin to laugh, a deep, hearty, sinister laugh. My friends are freaking out, and I am too on the inside. It's like I can still see through my eyes, but something else entirely has control of my body. Just before we reach the highway, my body goes cool and limp. I'm breathing hard, and I sit back in my seat. As soon as I'm in control again, I look at my friends and I ask, what the heck just happened to me? It was the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me, and I'll never forget it. I'm still not sure what happened that night. I've been back to Mount Misery after this, but I've never had that experience occur again. For the final story, I'll be re-narrating a tale from 2016, titled Camping in the Pine Barrens, from GW. I spent most of my life hunting and in the outdoors, so I know the various sounds. I can tell the difference between a deer and a person walking around. I'm also kind of good at tracking and would track my friends while hunting for the fun of it. The one thing that I never expected was for myself to be tracked in the woods at night. This happened a year ago to the month while out camping with my grandfather in New Jersey. I had just graduated school and was leaving for boot camp soon, so my grandfather wanted to go on one last trip with me before I was gone. The beginning of the trip went smoothly, lots of hiking and fishing. We went to the last place we were going to camp, and already it was getting kind of eerie. There was almost no other people here, and we were as far as you could get in. We got everything set up, and we ate, so I decided that I might as well walk down to the wash house about a mile down from us. The park had signs up about bears, so I had my knife on me. With it being New Jersey and all, we have really strict gun laws. I got down there no problem, only saw one person, and they were getting ready to head out. I took a shower, and by the time that was over, it was already dark out. Almost 100 meters down the road, the atmosphere goes south fast. It went from bugs making noise to dead silence, something I'd never experienced in my time outdoors. You know that feeling almost like a sixth sense of knowing something isn't right? Well, those alarms were going off in my head. I slowed down my steps to reduce sound, and I began to listen. About 20 yards to my right, something was parallel to me walking. My first thought was possibly a bird hopping in the leaves, but every time I would stop, so would this silhouette. Listening closely, I could hear it better. I could get a better idea of it. I could tell it was large enough to snap branches, and also that it was bipedal. I was carrying a large hunting knife as my only protection, but I knew that it wouldn't do much if something like that was to jump out at me. I couldn't run no matter how much I wanted to, because I knew that it would catch me. The only bet I had was to keep the same pace and keep going, ready to fight or run. I walked the entire way back like this. I couldn't tell anyone because who would believe me? I barely slept that night, expecting to hear it come closer and to see it in person. I've only told this story to a couple of close friends of mine, and they know that I wouldn't make it up. Now I want to go back there, to see if it'll come back, to see if I can actually see it. Stay out of the Pine Barrens. Creepy critters lurk there. Sour spirits dwell there, and some very irritating celebrities prowl the local shores. Seriously now, the Pine Barrens is an eerie place, and it's best for those who are well prepared and ready to see something weird. Good night. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you have a story of your own, share it with us at darkstories.org. If you want to support the show, check the links below. There's a link to donate to my Patreon and a link to my merch store. Now, as usual, here are my 5 favorite early comments from the previous episode about 5 disturbing security guard stories. Josh George says, "Yay, just what I needed. Dude, I love the cars." Just some Bigfoot with internet access says, "When the guard is guarding a place near my woods and sees me." Yeah, it's just so sad when people judge you by your looks and amount of hair all over your body. Fireshard2 Vlog says, "Secure, more like insecure." Are we talking about the security guard stories or my junior high career? Derek Perry says, "I love you, man, you're awesome." I appreciate you saying that, but I don't feel it. I feel old and fat. But I'm happy still, so I guess that counts for something. Gabriel Sanchez says, "Okay, I kinda got scared." Well, with a Tickle Me Elmo looking profile picture, I'm sure you did get scared. But luckily, that was the point of the video, so I'm glad you had a good time. Frankie Gill says, "Well, this is gonna be amazing. Let me grab my corn." I like to imagine that you didn't mean popcorn, and you grabbed a big old can of cream corn. But at least that would be healthier, I think. Well, that brings us to the end of this Darkness Prevails episode. But don't you worry, because more scary stories are on the way soon. So stay tuned. Until next time, here are the credits to my amazing patrons who continue to donate and support the show. Remember, stay safe out there, and stay creepy. Because this world is a strange one.